It is bigger than you. I mean, this is where I've had a friend ask me, but how do you do what you're doing? And I'm like, well, because I don't have a choice. Like it feels, and I'm not the only creative person who's ever said that, right? But that's
Mm-hmm.
how it feels. I feel like I don't have a choice,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, of
It's
course I do have a choice, but yeah, I feel compelled to write,
mm-hmm.
compelled to share, compelled to carry on with it. Like,
Welcome to Faith and What Resonates, a show that explores the intersection of faith, spirituality, music, and the nature of inspiration. I'm Gail Gallagher, and I'm a professional musician and lifelong seeker. I was raised both Catholic and Unitarian Universalist at the same time, and as I grew up sorting my theology, I found my spiritual ground in music and theater. On this show, I interview folks about their faith journeys and the role music plays in their lives as we explore the magic of the things that resonate. My guest today is Wanda Gronhovd. Wanda is a Canada-based musician and healer who connects people to the divine through stories and songs of hope and transformation. In this conversation, we talk about her unique faith journey, songwriting and divine connection, and other points in between. Also, you'll hear clips of her music throughout the show. Here's a piece of Pieces of Her Heart, the title track of her most recent EP, as we go into our conversation.
Leftover pieces of her heart. Leftover pieces don't fall apart. They sit before the judge. There is no air. Her words get lost. The stakes too high.
Right, so I am here on the Zoom with my friend Wanda Gronhovd. Hi, Wanda.
hey, Gail, nice to see you.
Yeah, and thanks to the magic of the internet, I get to talk to people in Canada.
That's right.
I know, I absolutely love it. So, Wanda, go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do in the world.
Oh, wow. Yes. So I'm a retired RN. I had a 35-year career. I retired a couple years ago, and I am a healer musician. No, a musician healer. Can't remember which way I decided to say it. Yes. So singer-songwriter. I'm also a writer. I have a novel that I am working on. And what else do I say? That's what I'm doing in my work world. I am a grandmother, a mother, married, have a wife. Yeah,
All good things. All good things.
things.
Yeah, the more I hear about your journey, like through your songs and through like when you're, either talking about it on social media or when we've talked previously, like you've had quite a journey.
Yes, as someone has said, or maybe it comes to my mind, it's like, yes, I've had a life.
Yeah.
It does feel like I don't need to have too many more experiences. I'm 62. I will be 62, so it feels like it's been pretty full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you outline sort of what your basic like faith alignment is, both like sort of where it started and where it started and how it's going, as the meme goes.
Yes, I was thinking about this yesterday when I was, just writing some things down so that I spoke about it all. So I was baptized in a Lutheran church when I was a year and a half old, from the pietist part of the Lutheran church that's connected to Norway. That's my father's background. My mother is from a United Church background, which I was thinking about. You don't have the United Church in the States, but it's a mainstream church, and I can't remember who it all came from, but they are certainly the church in Canada that has been the most around justice, and they ordained LGBTQIA. I know I'm missing something in there, in the 80s, the late 80s, and so women would have been ordained around that time as well.
Very cool.
So yes, so I don't feel as connected. However, I got married in a United Church to a woman, so that's sort of bookending kind of my experience in a way. Had close friends. My godmother's family and my best friend who lived down the road went to Bible camp. So I had my born again experience in this very dry, hilly kind of area in the south of Saskatchewan at Simi Bible Camp, and went out on the road behind where there had been a speaker who was he wasn't a minister, he was a lay minister who I knew of from another small town in the south. It's almost on the border to the States. And I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior in sort of that way. And have a song about my friend Debbie, about she and I, sitting on a hill when we were a little bit older, waiting for Jesus to come in the clouds. So that's kind of where I started from. And at a place where, my parents went to the Lutheran church, but they were like not from that kind of a Lutheran background, right? They were partying and drinking and doing those things.
Yeah. So the particular flavor of Lutheran was more like strict, and they were more like liberal. Or,
yes.
Okay.
Or they were just being more normal people in the world, right? So
Got it.
Yeah, I was very worried about them not making it to heaven, shall we say, as a 12-year-old. So I was a super serious person.
Yes.
Met my husband there at Bible camp, and we went to a private Lutheran school in grade 11 and 12 and did a year of Bible, and were married shortly after that. I guess I was 19, so like right after that happened. So he went to seminary. I carried on with him, took piano lessons because I wanted to be the wife who would be playing the organ in the church. Never did that, but that was sort of that idea, right? So and it's really interesting how memory goes as you go on in your life, because I was going to go to seminary, and I totally forgot that until about 10 years ago, because I had applied to seminary. I was accepted, and we were going to move. After we'd had 2 little boys, we lived in Montreal, Quebec, because my ex-husband speaks French, and that's a whole other story. But we were at this time then the pastor's family. And then I came out as being a lesbian. So as you can see, it was a huge experience. I didn't go to seminary. So it's just really interesting now when I have felt brought back to kind of a spiritual mission with my music, that it's sort of feels like a bit of a 30-year hiatus.
Yeah, that is a whole journey. I'm not surprised that you considered seminary. This is something that I was actually talking about to our mutual friend Cece. We were talking about how you can just sense people who have considered seminary, because I'm also one of those people. But you can just I can tell.
It's so interesting to me, Gail. It's so interesting, Well, and like I remember going to my Greek class. Did I go to Greek classes? I don't know. So when my ex-husband was in seminary from 1982, I guess, to 85 is when we moved to Montreal. So it was around that time. We had a year of internship in there. I was a nurse by that point, so I was going along. I was flexible about work and all that. But I did take some classes with him. Like, I was interested, and women were just being ordained in the Lutheran Church at that time, because there were women in those classes. So that was when I was first hearing about language and how we say things, and then, the discussion around whether we change old texts because they're not speaking language in a way that is proper, right? So you weren't born yet, but that's what we were talking about in the 80s. So,
Good to know.
From an intellectual point of view, like I am an intellect also, or part of me is. So I of course, it makes sense that I would have been attracted to seminary, right? Yeah, it's true. And I am a speaker, so I have learned about myself that I think I like to speak as much as sing, which, singing is one of my most favorite things, performing. So, yeah. And so I think, in my marriage, besides the fact of all the other sexual things that were going on, I don't think it was really about having to be one kind of sexual expression or not. But I was in competition with my ex-husband. I wanted to probably be him. I felt more spiritual than he was. I felt that everyone was had him on a pedestal. He's still a great speaker. Like he was a great preacher. He knows how to storytell. He was really good at that. But I think there was a lot of jealousy there on my part, and I had to play second string. So I know you haven't known me long, Gail, but you probably get that I don't do well in the shadow of.
Oh, I respect that immensely.
Oh my God. Yes, because, no, I think that was probably, there's all kinds of dynamics in marriages. We don't always understand them till decades later, I'll say.
Mhm.
But, I had my own life to live. And I don't think I would have, regardless of, kind of the whole, that other gender, not gender, but the sexual expression or your, I think that when I came out, the gift of coming out was that I could leave my marriage because I would not have otherwise. I was the good Christian girl, who didn't have sex before she got married, tried to be the good person, found it really challenging in that way. And so I married a really good friend. So I didn't have to deal with my own sexuality. So like all of that is quite complicated, that you don't unravel until later. And then you fall in love with someone and you're like, oh, I haven't had this experience before. Oh, well, I don't want to miss it. Yeah. Having 2 little kids. I mean, that's a whole other sort of discussion right around sexuality. But of course, everything is all together. I was a minister's wife who now I recognize that no one came to see how I was. Right? I may have left him, but we were still within the bigger church, He would have been ministered to by the bishop, but I never was. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's like some next level internal politics nonsense, it sounds like.
Yeah, which I never would have thought about then because I was so, we had 2 little kids and, it was the whole, but there was all of those other emotional things and coming out, right? My family is, now 30 years later, all is well. They've danced at my wedding to my wife. However, the years in between, they're a very conservative southern Saskatchewan, it's still a very conservative province, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's so I don't know the like dynamics of how these things fall in Canada compared to like because the United States has all sorts of flavors of Christian and conservative Christian, but it is interesting hearing how that falls within Canada and Canadian culture.
Yes, well, so the West is kind of like the Wild West in the States, right? It's a bit like that here too. Alberta. I don't know as much about Manitoba, but Alberta and Saskatchewan for sure, right? We're conservative governments. We're very conservative, whereas where most of the population is, right, in Ontario and Quebec, it has a different flavor, which I lived in Quebec when I came out. It was not an issue for my children.
Okay.
My ex-husband was going to university, and so, too, we didn't have a church that we had to deal with at the time. He went back to a community after, but he went on, like he did his PhD at McGill. So, he had his own life that was happening in a different way at the same time, right?
So it's like being in New York and then being out in like Montana.
Yes, that's exactly it. Montana is about 30 minutes from where I grew up. That's how far south we are. So we're right.
Yeah.
That far away from the border. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And I've been on a road trip through Canada with my dad. I've been across Saskatchewan and I've watched Corner Gas. So those are the things that I know.
Okay, you've watched Corner Gas. My mother doesn't like that show because she thinks they make too much fun of us. Right? She feels insulted. It's hilarious to most of us that live here. Yes. Yeah. I forgot about Corner Gas.
Yeah, no. And that was the show that I would always watch with my friend Michelle, who now hosts Pastor and a Priest. Like that's what we would watch in college. So when she listens to it, she can enjoy that shout out.
Of course.
Yeah.
So it was filmed 40 minutes south of where I live right now. Yeah, in Regina. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, we're gonna circle back. So now, how do you describe your spiritual flavor now? Like, what is that like now?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Yes, so my spiritual flavor would be that I have returned to feeling that the goddess is really the divine whom I feel the most connected to. Okay. And that did start to happen in the 90s, but I kind of, again, tried to, reinsert myself back into the church. and had some success and not some success, right? But now I really realize that really I feel the most connected. I had a vision of a prairie goddess in the 90s, and she is really who I feel connected to. And so that is where it is. And yeah, I feel outside of, I'm still so attracted to, the Lutheran tradition is in my bones as far as being attracted to having, what's the word, Gail? Like ritual, right?
Yeah.
Ritual practices, they're very simple. I mean, meditation, I have been involved with insight meditation community here. So Buddhism I am not a Buddhist, but I have been really influenced by them and listened to lots of podcasts from, 10% Happier is one of them, right?
10% Happier.
Yeah. So, right, that's more, so it's quite broad. I've totally given up that idea of sin. I just can't really go with that.
Mm-hmm.
However, so mysticism, I was attracted to mysticism way back when. In fact, this is a fun little fact, maybe. My ex-husband used to say to me, if you hadn't gotten married, you would have been in a monastery. So, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I think as far as a spiritual practice and being kind of like a contemplative in another century or whatever, I certainly could have been a contemplative, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I feel like we were in the same past life monastery because I also, I'm just gonna say that because I like to think about how like in a past life I was probably like one of those chill monks that brewed beer. So like, so I'm okay. I'm on board with that headcanon.
Well, I Brother Cadful, do you know that mystery series?
Oh, I don't. Please tell me.
Okay, well, we'll have to talk about it offline because he was a monk.
Mm-hmm.
The whole series, it's maybe 50 murder mysteries, but he has a herb garden and like it's 11th century. I mean, it is just, yes, I think I was so attracted to it because I could imagine myself
Mm-hmm.
there, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So like,
Hmm.
so like a little bit of that Christian root with a spice of Buddhism with emphasis on
Yes.
divine goddess.
Yes.
Yes. And also you do Reiki, right?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do Reiki. So when I had my 3rd degree Reiki, so there is a process. I hope I can describe it very well. But when you were ready to graduate, I guess, with your 3rd degree, my 2nd degree. I hope to do my 3rd degree in the fall. But so that is you're connected to source. I mean, that's the word that is used because it is, and I've been talking about the universe for ages. So I don't know why I don't think that people know that I have a spiritual part. Mm-hmm. It's just, it became so much more deeper or just remembering. I think there was more of a remembering. But anyway, when I did receive we'll just call them, the gifts of the 2nd degree during that ceremony. So there was a ceremony. I didn't see Jesus and Mary there, but the woman who sort of anointed me is kind of what's happening. She saw them there with me. So the biggest gift of that for me was, oh, right, I can see Jesus in a different way as a teacher, right? Which I know lots of people do, but for me, coming from that tradition that's so steeped with how we see Jesus as Savior, it was like, oh, okay. And I, in fact, wrote a song where those are the lyrics. Jesus and Mary helping us, holding space for us in this new paradigm, which is what we're in, right? Mm-hmm. People will tell you of whoever have got that insight that we're kind of in a new paradigm as far as spirituality and that things have sped up and
yeah, no, there's definitely a larger conversation happening as far as like exploring how do we make meaning, and also like realizing that the journey is so personal, and like what you said resonates with me because like I don't call the particular sense that I have of the divine, like I'm not going to immediately attribute it to Jesus. Yeah. But like I also recognize that this is probably this is not the language that I speak, but we're probably talking about the same thing. It's all language, and it's all because the source is also connected to how we process our creativity, we can only
Yes.
make meaning of it through stories.
Yes. Yes. And, well, I believe I'm married to the woman I am married to because she is more open to all kinds of different spiritual expressions, which then helped me so much on that way, on that road, because I can be super practical and super like, well, masculine energy brain, right? Not bringing in the feminine piece. And so for me, doing my second degree in December, and then going on this journey with Emma around soul sound, and it's just like that helped me because she uses, I know all about the chakras and all of that from the last few years, more probably because of the Reiki, because I did do my first degree the year before, right? And I realized that at the beginning of the pandemic, when I started writing a couple of songs, I was willing to speak more about Mother Earth, that she's going to take care of us, because I needed the reassurance, as did other people around me who were listening, right? Because people needed reassurance. They need to know. Whatever you want to call. You can be an atheist and not believe in anything, but I don't think that's very helpful for us because there's so many things we can't control.
Well, the thing about atheists is that they do have a thing. There's something that brings them to a flow state. I am married to one. And his spiritual connection is cooking and going out in nature. Like his whole, his family wasn't particularly churchy growing up, and they would go out on hikes. So the thing is, you're gonna have something that, like, what matters is you have a thing that connects you. And you might not speak that language, you might not speak that God language, but there's a thing that grounds you. Like, if you're being a whole human,
Yes, yeah. It's well, I think that's where in music, I've been in the studio with guys who would never talk any kind of God language, but they're all knowing that there's synchronicity that's happening as they all bring their creativity together, right? It is magic, and it's magic because there is that connection with the divine, I think. And anyway, I appreciate what you're saying about flow state, because I think that is the piece. And it makes me think of, Elizabeth Gilbert's book around Big Magic.
Oh yeah, Big Magic is so good.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so good because it's saying it all. That's exactly why, I think that's why people who aren't creative or haven't tapped into their creativity are so kind of like, don't understand. And yet when you are in it or allow yourself to open to it, right? I've written songs and gone back and thought, well, what? Where is that from? Knowing that then there is another connection, right? Someone else is giving me something to share because I can be a conduit.
Yeah. This is a great transition into the music piece of things. Audience, for those who don't know, I know Wanda through this group called Amplify, and which is a musician mastermind group, and it's just this wonderful world of musicians from all over the country and all over the world who are doing the thing, and it's awesome. And so you've been, and someone we know from there, Emma Bach, back.
It is BACK.
It is. I don't know why. When
because we love Bach.
One, because we love Bach, and two, because we only see people's names in writing on the internet, and then you have to say it out loud. But anyway, you've been working with her, and you've been also starting to do these untangling concerts. So
Right,
yeah. So tell me a little bit about how that's been and what discoveries you've been finding.
So the process that Emma teaches around discovering your soul sound is about receiving and offering.
Okay.
So it has, been a profound practice, and it takes practice to learn and to do it. And so it has transformed how I am presenting my songs, but also, I think the other piece of it is, is that develop my mission, which I kind of, I've done that work before. There is like What's Your Default and some of the work that we've done in our Amplify group, right? And have some, words that have been guiding me. But my voice is necessary because I am here to connect people to the divine and assist them on their healing journey. So when I have that as kind of a container, then it really helps me to not worry about a whole bunch of other people or things or the music industry, or right. It just helps me to realize I am here for a certain group of people. I have something to offer. It is of value, and they can come on in.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so you've started doing this concert series.
Yeah, I did one in May through an online forum, which it was quite cool because there are people from the eastern states, and then there's my friend in Montreal, and then there's people from here, and because yes, I miss performing live, but it has meant that people can come from anywhere, right?
Oh yeah. That's really the best thing. Like when I did my release party, it was like all of the people could tune in from all over, and it is this magical thing for sure. But yeah, so you did the one in May, and then and then this is coming out right around when you're doing one in September.
Yes.
So
3 different themes. I was calling them Soul Sound concerts, but the third theme, I'm not quite sure. This one I'm doing in July. You will have all missed it, you poor people. Then September the 23rd, I'm doing my third one. Yeah.
Cool. And what are some of the themes that you've done?
So I did one on clarity, which is my word for the year. So sort of, and then talking to people about, what do they need to clarify? What's, using questions to engage with people on Zoom, because it can be really helpful to do that. And, I had a friend say it was the most intimate concert. So when you can set up that space from a online, to have that kind of online presence, that's very nice to hear that I was able to do that. So the untangling, I do think maybe the next one will be about untangling too, because, untangling from past experiences, untangling from toxic relationships. How many things could we talk about? And so, I'll try to keep a focus to a couple. And then, the one coming out very shortly, we'll talk about untangling some other good things.
Awesome.
Untangling our ideas of spirituality, right? That could be a whole thing.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, that's part of why I love doing these interviews is to explore all of everybody's like personal journeys and all of these things for sure. Cool. So, I'm really excited for that concert series, and hopefully things will time out that I can make one of these. But I would love to hear about how your spirituality, relationship with the divine ties into your writing process and what that experience is like. And if you have a particular songs that you want to go into the story of writing those songs, you could do that.
So I have found that it certainly is a way to talk about things that I can't quite understand. When I retired, I had a couple months to spend at the lake. So it's an interesting transition. I think I'm still going through it, especially because COVID kind of, was right smack dab in the middle of that last year. So I what is my process? I mean, I connect into, now I am being more conscious about connecting in and having a meditation practice and, right, being in that space of receiving from the divine. And I'm often trying to write about things to try to explain, what it was like when I felt, the hawk was talking to me, or how it felt to see my aunties who have passed on in front of me, being present with me. What it was like when I was really ill in 2014, and one of my best friends who passed on ages ago was sitting at the end of the bed and telling me everything was going to be okay. Like how to sort of talk about these mystical experiences that there's no logic there, right? And I think through songwriting, it can make it, I don't want to say it's more palatable, but it helps me to process also the experience. And I think then it helps to say, okay, so the divine is really bigger than we know. right? We are being cared for in ways we don't understand, and then finding a way to sort of put that down in writing. And I follow a pretty traditional kind of songwriting process, right? You talk about the first thing in the first verse, and but I'm all about the melody. So if I've got a good melody, write the chorus and off we go.
Nice. So it sounds to me like it's like based on specific imagery and visions, and really locking into the specific feelings of your songs, and then like trying to catch that, like get that specific story, and like be honest with yourself, basically.
And sometimes I don't even know what it is that wants to be talked about, right? And to process other things, right? Experiences with, I have a whole song about conversation I had with my ex-husband, which is kind of, it's kind of a spiritual thing to have reconciliation with someone, right? After 30 years. I mean, now it's, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's 30 years since we've been split up. And to process things that have been difficult in relationship, right? We're all in relationship to all kinds of people. So sometimes there's that stuff too. It's part of processing, right? Illness in family, tough relationships with family members. Sometimes that gets processed for sure. So again, that's not specifically always bringing in the divine, but these are certainly, kind of, I think, processing our emotions and tapping into our bodies. I mean, I've done lots of somatic experiencing work with counselors in the past, and that too, I think, helps me to tap into what my body might want to speak forth, right? Which, I mean, it's all, right? It's all connected somehow.
Like oh man. No, it's so interesting, because I'm realizing that similarly with with my album, like I am now like so much in a different place I was when I wrote the songs, and a different place I was when I produced the songs, and I feel like I have like well and truly like put that part, it's like a Horcrux, like it's like I put that part of myself in that album, like past Gail is there, she's in that album, but like I was able to leave that part of myself behind in that album.
Yes.
And like I can still look at it and reflect on it, but like we're now different people.
It's almost like when people say take a box with those difficult experiences and put it on a shelf. It's kind of like what you're describing. So you've taken that, put it in that album, and now that's over there.
Like songwriting is a way, like sometimes it can be to there's a divine connection in the moment, maybe sometimes as you're creating and you're processing, and there's the connecting we have in the moment, and then there's what that piece is as it lives on, because we've put this part of ourselves outside of ourselves.
Yes, I think probably my last EP that I put out last September is that. It's called Pieces of Her Heart, and it felt like a completion of, kind of dealing with or describing those things from my coming out and my relationship with my ex-husband, some of the stuff around my kids, and that really feels like a completion, and that it was, and I feel like I was able to then put things over there in a way that I had not before. There was some completion. Yeah.
So it and you can argue about what compels you to make the thing, like what is like there's something in your soul that compels you to make the thing, whether it's external or internal is up for debate, but like there is this, it is bigger than you, and it does just come through you.
It is bigger than you. I mean, this is where, right, I've had a friend ask me, but how do you do what you're doing? And I'm like, well, because I don't have a choice. Like it feels, and I'm not the only creative person who's ever said that, right? But that's how it feels. I feel like I don't have a choice. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course I do have a choice, but yeah, I feel compelled to write, compelled to share, compelled to carry on with it. Like, yeah. And I don't, like I just said yesterday to my wife, I was like, okay, if I hadn't been doing this, if I didn't have this, especially during COVID, not so much about being retired, I think I would have gone back to work
Mm.
because, you know, there would have been something to put some structure on this time that has been, it has been a gift in its way and totally out of side of our previous experience as humans
Yeah.
in the last century,
Yeah.
since 1918. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that almost circles back to the being in a different paradigm conversation and the larger movement conversation, which makes me think of, so there's a book called A Paradise Built in Hell. It's written by Rebecca Solnit, and
Oh,
it
I've
is,
read another of her books.
yeah,
Okay.
she's wonderful. And it is all about how she studies disaster or cultures of after natural disasters or other disasters, and the mini utopias that come out of it, and like, and also like
Okay.
the more chaotic moments. But it's really asking the question: are we essentially good? In, you know, what is human nature? Yes, there's fight or flight, but also there's attend and befriend. And I'm very curious. Like, I haven't checked like if she's written anything about this moment, because it's like, hey Rebecca, how you doing? Are you studying this right now? Like, I want to check on that. But I read that book like in like 2016, 2017, when I was like, let's talk about connection through disasters. And you know, and there's a lot of things, like the idea that the San Francisco earthquake, there was like, so the turn of the century San Francisco earthquake, there was a like little pockets of like mini utopias that sprung up as people were taking care of each other, and there was this tremendous amount of like support and giving back that was happening. And and Dorothy Day was like a tiny child then, and that was sort of what inspired her stuff.
Yeah, I know, Dorothy.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a book that's very good, and I'm just telling everybody about that right now. But I think within that is this collective moment of slowing down, realizing what's important, and looking at our essential humanity and like what is at the root of all of the things.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, on the other side of that, there was lots of time during COVID, and we're still, I mean, we at least, not my province, but we are still practicing being, because we don't, you know, it's not over yet.
Yeah.
But I also realized that for me, in many ways, my life wasn't that much different. I'd be doing mostly the same things, except visiting a few more friends and shopping more.
Yeah.
But otherwise, as a true introvert who is doing most of my work alone, I would be spending most of my time alone anyway. Right? So in many ways, I recognize as time went on how much of an introvert I am, right? If I were, I mean, I was asked once, because I am a nurse, so I was in this thing, you know, where you're educating how you can educate people to do, you know, to make their, what they want is their last, do you want to keep living or not, right? Okay. Your code status, as we would say in healthcare. What would you want? What do you want? What would you do if you had 3 days left? So without thought, I'm going off hiking. And of course, there's only 2 of us in the last 3 years of teaching the course who weren't wanting to go off and be with their families, right? And the teacher of it said to me, or the social worker who was leading it, don't feel bad, Wanda. And I thought, well, I don't feel bad, because I know. I really didn't feel bad. And so Robin just laughed and said, yeah, well, just tell me where you're going. I'll come find you when, you know, in the 3 days time, right? Like she wasn't insulted either, because she knows me well enough to know that indeed would be what I would want to do. I wouldn't want to go and hang out with a bunch of people. So that's, I mean, it's good information to have about yourself, right? That's all for me.
Oh,
it was just good information to have. Yeah.
For sure.
But anyway, I did feel compassion for people who are extroverts. I have seen some friends and people who are really active with other people all the time usually. I mean, because I'm not. So it's like, oh, they really are having a harder time. I mean, it really is harder for them. Because in my mind, it's like, so stay home for a while and not lots of empathy sometimes, because I'm the hard-nosed nurse too, that if you aren't crashing and burning, carry on and get over it, right? So there is that part of me too, that I both sides, both that I know how to hold the container. I was an excellent nurse always probably, but certainly in the last part of my life, to be able to be with people in their most difficult situations. And I guess that was the piece. You might want to cut this out. Yeah. But that you know, people's lives are falling apart all the time. It's just that in COVID, we see it all together. And that everyone has had to see that this is actually life. We can't control what's coming next. And we've each individually had things that have been difficult, which is always the case also. I mean, it is a spiritual thing to realize that we cannot control what's next. That the virus, that the universe, like there are so many things we have no control over. We don't have control over when we get ill, when people die. I mean, you know, I worked in palliative care for 10 years. I worked beside the ICU beds for, 7. I mean, to be with people in those most difficult times and to know they didn't cause what's happening. This is something that has just come. And then how are you in it? So, because that's my life's, my other life's not goal really, but I want to be grounded enough so that when it's my turn to pass over, I will be able to do so with grace, calmness, and be ready to pass to the next, whatever happens after this life.
That went on an adventure.
Yes. I just have so many nursey feelings that my challenge with them is that I'm no longer in a nursing community. Yeah. And I wouldn't fit with the retired nurses either, because I've got a whole other life that's more important than that. But I have found during COVID it really challenging because I don't have a community to talk about from a nursing point of view, right?
Yeah. And like, it's interesting, like, so when I interviewed Reverend Michelle Byerly, and we were talking about her experience as a hospital chaplain, and like, there's an episode, do you know the movie The Fountain?
No.
So it features Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz, and they're like a couple in like 3 different like time periods, and it's about like and the main plot line is the wife has cancer, and he's like, and Hugh Jackman's character is a scientist who's like trying to like find a miracle cure and going crazy about it, and then there's all these different time periods. Anyway, that's like the next episode of a pastor and a priest walk into a movie theater, and I've heard it. It'll be out by the time this comes out, and it is them talking about that movie from the context of having been hospital chaplains.
Oh my.
So you might want to check out that episode.
Because I did think about doing that job at one point as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, which they are, hospital chaplains are spiritual rock stars. For sure. Like, just like absolutely. Having to be there for where you're at. But, so I would love to go into like the story of a couple of your songs, and then share some of those songs with listeners. Put in whatever you want to share.
Whatever I want to share. So I do have my little book of lyrics right here, as it happens.
Yeah.
This one I have as a demo. It might work okay. So 3 Angels is probably my most favorite song of the moment of mine, if I can say that about my own work. And this is one of the songs where I had sort of a interesting experience with a healer who I was a nurse with, and she is now a healer. So she and I worked in ICU together and have been friends since that time. So we have a deep connection anyway. But when I was really feeling, I was just feeling like I wasn't good enough, and what was I going to, I guess it was last summer. So I started seeing her regularly to sort of do some healing on this healing journey in a way that I don't really understand necessarily, but yeah, she does, she has a Reiki background. I will say the thing about Reiki, because we did talk about it, it's just that to me, the connection where it goes back for centuries, Reiki practice does, and the idea, because you can do Reiki from a distance, but it feels so connected to what Jesus did with hands-on healing. And when you read back far enough, there can be seen to be some connection to that. It's kind of, it is awe-inspiring, really, to see that when I realize that, right? My hands are warming up as I'm talking about Reiki. So we worked together, and during one of our sessions, she said to me that 3 parts of my soul had split off. So she can see these things, right? So that I don't, there's a mysticism there, or I don't really understand what exactly she does. But she brought back these 3 parts of my soul that apparently split off when I was 5, which can happen to people. I can see, I have a grandchild who's 3. I can see her as a child, how, she doesn't have any walls. There's no covering of her spirit, right? She's just who she is. So I can see how that could happen. So this song that I wrote was to try, I think, to understand how these 3 angels came back to me, which were safety, innocence, and the third one, it doesn't look like it's here there was a third one. So that's what this song is about, and how I could see as well that I can see those things in the eyes of other people. But I think that in some ways, the best line of lyrics here is, secrets hang in the darkness. As they are spoken, then we can see each other.
Angels came to me, oh, in the night. Oh, they brought me to myself. They hold me close. Safety envelops me, takes me to a younger day. Oh, when innocence reigned free. Secrets hang in the darkness till they are spoken. Oh, then we can see each other.
So for me, the most vulnerable part of writing a song like this is saying, I've had these experiences, and not hiding them, because for a long time I didn't really want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because as we talked about language being misunderstood, I coming from a very kind of fundamentalist background, right? I know how black and white that thinking can be, and just how black and white we can be as human beings. Lots of people are. It's difficult to talk about those things, right? And so it was a mystical experience to have, just in the healing experience, to be able to see what she was talking about. So that's where that song comes from, which to me, I think when I sing something that touches me, I feel then too that I have something that's really at my core to offer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a few things. Like, as far as when something, one, being able to talk about this imagery is a vulnerable thing, and I feel like I with my own mystical experiences and my own songwriting, like my style is very like, I saw this thing, but then I like make a joke about it in the chorus, like what I do with like 222 and stuff like that. But to be comfortable enough in your vulnerability to be like, here it is, and it's all poetry. So, like, I'm expressing this feeling, but like by doing it through music, it gives that much more validity to the story, because you're able to add the emotions of that experience and communicate it better than trying to describe the imagery.
Yes, totally. Because then you don't have to talk about, you don't have to do the objective talking about, right? Yeah, that's really true. And I think I get some of the courage to do that from a writer um, who wrote books and lived out on a ranch close to where I grew up. And because she talked about, she walked the land for years, and then the coyotes and the visions, and right. So then she started to write about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And, the people that live there who are her neighbors, they probably all think she's a bit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it helped me because she talks about that in one of her books.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's way more people that do have these experiences, but it's really difficult to talk about.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear that song.
Well, the other song that I thought of, there was two. The one is called In Your Hands, and it does have some sort of, it doesn't have to have Christian kind of connotations. It really does depend on who you believe. I think I do talk about eagles, right? The verse from Isaiah, I think it is, where eagles raise up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it has that verse in there.
Okay.
As the bridge. But that that one I wrote, I believe, in 2012. It is on my first album, Awakening. And I did sing it in church when I was going to church, because it can be really easily related to, but this idea that, we are in someone's hands, right? In your hands. And the lyrics are totally gone, which, it's a song I've sung 1,000 times. But I just think that, again, to me, the idea of surrender and trust, that's what the whole song is about.
Take me, hold me in your hands. I shall rise up on the wings of eagles. I shall rise up with your help. The tears they run down my face when I cry, and I feel great to be alive, to feel the joy and all the grace that's come to me.
Right. Well, I was sitting up at the lake, I don't know, in 2017, before my second album came out, and like trust, that was the word, right? I wrote it out, I painted it, put it up so I would keep remembering and then would forget, right? That I need to trust that I'm not in that I'm not in charge, right? Of anything.
Yeah.
And the other song that comes to mind is Silence. And I haven't recorded it, but I probably have a piece that I could send you. I think I've got it somewhere, a demo that I did with my producer of an a cappella. It is an a cappella song that I wrote after I had been in the studio with my first album and felt really like, I don't know what I'm doing. And this song came out of some reading books and my Buddhist meditation, like insight meditation practice, mindfulness. And it was really about, again, being in the silence and then trusting, right? It's all about being able to sit in the silence and recognizing that we are being cared for by someone else, right? That there is something bigger than us. It is, it's a beautiful song, I have to say.
Silence, rest in silence. I sit and wait for you to fill my heart, it's true. I sit and wait for the light to shine through the crack that's in my heart. It will not break apart when it's filled with your light.
Oh man. So what you're saying about trust and trusting the silence is really, it's making me think of something I write about. I've explored a few times because I'm theistic, but like the language is, here and there. And this is also based on, so my mom was more atheistic, And at one point when she messaged me while she was whacked out on chemo drugs and just DM'd me, I have an idea for a lay-led sermon. It's called If There's No God, Then Who's on the Phone? And that was like the entire message. And like we didn't
Didn't explore it.
we didn't explore it together. I was like, that sounds cool. But I've always pondered that, and where I ponder it within that is who are you trusting? If you are to surrender to something and you don't necessarily believe in like a male pronounced bearded man god, what is it that you are trusting? And I like this idea of trusting the silence. And for me, like there is that like internal wisdom voice, which can be a conduit. But yes, I like that idea of trusting the silence, because that's where we find whatever it is we call that thing that is bigger than us.
Well, and I was just listening to a podcast with Brené Brown and her sisters, and that's what they were talking about, was being able to silence themselves enough to hear, to not just go to distraction, not just, right? Because it is so tempting anyway, and it's certainly been more tempting during COVID when there's more. We always live in uncertainty, but there has been more, right? So how do we manage these unmanageable times? I mean, that is really what people have lived through and are still living through. And right, it's like what can we do? Well, and it comes back to, like self-care and self-compassion, self-love, these things that can, I don't know, people can just say they're not great words to use. But in many ways, it's like, so even in being silent and learning to somehow be with what is uncomfortable, that's taking care of myself more, right? Than scrolling through Facebook again, because I don't know what else to do, and I'm really uncomfortable, and I don't like the feelings that are coming up.
And this is making me think of, and now we're just recommending books back into each other, and then I will rein it back in. But I'm currently reading Reclaiming Conversation by Sherry Turkle, which, so this is a general recommend to audience and everyone, but Sherry Turkle has been studying technology and psychology since like we started doing the internet. Like her entire career and body of work is technology and psychology. And Reclaiming Conversation was written in 2015, so like there's a little bit of a sweet summer child, you haven't hit 2016 yet, but it does talk about social media and how we deny ourselves solitude and we deny ourselves real conversation. But she quotes Thoreau a lot, and this idea that one of the core takeaways that I'm going with is we need our solitude and we need to be comfortable in silence with ourselves so that we can learn to be more comfortable and open with each other. And
for true connection.
Yeah, because you have to be connected with yourself, and like that helps you find, empathy with others.
Yes, it's like, right, you must love yourself in order to be able to love other people. Which this receiving practice is also has enhanced my other relationships, because I am more able to receive than before.
Yeah. Cool. So I want to start to wrap things up, but I'm curious because I wonder if there's any like, I don't normally ask people to give the audience mantra homework, but
Oh, snap.
But
Mantra
I'm feeling
homework.
it. No, like the way you say, like this receiving practice, if you wanted to, like, if you had to summarize like the core, like beginning of what that is and what that looks like, what would that be? Like, what are some of the core thoughts you go with?
I think the simplest practice that we can do is putting our feet on the floor and feeling them. And I resist it a lot. I don't even want to start. I don't want to do it, right? I don't want to always, because in a meditation practice, if you're sitting on the floor, it's the same. It can be just, you're your butt cheeks on the floor, right? And feeling your sit bones. But if you're feeling your feet on the floor and connecting down into Mother Earth, to me, right? You put your feet on the floor, you take a big breath and put your feet on the floor and feel down into the earth, way down into the very depth. Plug in and bring that energy back up into your feet. That can be the beginning of being more grounded, because we do need to be more grounded in order to then, I mean, that is the beginning. You need to be more grounded to go forward, right?
Yeah. You got to remember you have toes. You're not just a head.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, I mean, that to me, I guess that's, this is for me how that I'm right in the middle of trying to bring all of the different pieces in. And that's probably been part of that journey in the last 6 months, and recognizing, I do have a lot to offer, as well as to be able to know how to talk about these experiences I've had and what that wisdom might be. Yeah. Right? Because there's all these things that are intersecting, right? The meditation experience, the Reiki experience, the divine, recognizing the divine feminine, being more open to my own femininity, but the divine feminine, the feminine, right? What that means to trust that and not to let the brain, to recognize, listening to your own body that, that has all of our wisdom, all of that combined, right?
Yeah. Awesome. This is normally where I would ask, where does inspiration live in your body? But I'm curious how you take that question. Yeah.
Right there in the core.
Right there in the core.
Right below my belly button, the core. Yes. So that would be your sacral chakra, I believe. Yeah. Yes. I don't want to get them wrong.
You lose a Reiki point
then. Because your root chakra is one thing that keeps you rooted, but the sacral chakra is and that's where you tune into when you're doing your Reiki practice as well, right? That is the same spot. Yeah. So that I would say is where inspiration comes from. But inspiration comes, right, in silence, in allowing myself to go walking, in sitting at the lake by myself, in sitting by water, right? I mean, we talk about, then there's the 4 elements, right? Then we can bring all that into the medicine wheel. I mean, there's all of the knowledge from our First Nations peoples as well, right?
Yeah. All sorts of places that we can find wisdom, for sure.
Absolutely, yes. The wisdom traditions, I believe, right? That they are called. Yeah.
Awesome. This has been a really great conversation. We went a lot of places, as we are wont to do on this show. So tell people where they can find you, where they can connect with you, what you got going on.
Okay. I never even thought of that. Thanks, Gail. This has been a great conversation. I've learned some things about you and about myself, which is like super interesting to learn as you talk, right? As you share your own experiences, I should say. So I am at WGG13. If you just look at WGG13, that's sort of my handle on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I do have a website if you want to spell out my whole name.
Cool. And I will put all of these things in the show notes, whatever you want me to put there. So.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be grand. That'd be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Gail. It's been really fun.
All right, friends, this is editor Gail speaking after this interview was recorded. Wanda's concert is now October 7th. It's a Zoom concert, and that link is in the show notes. All right, here's the outro.
Thank you for listening to Faith and What Resonates. The theme music for this show is an original composition called My Journey, My Song, the first song I wrote when I was 19. Faith and What Resonates is part of the New Faith New Media Network. You can discuss this and future episodes in the New Faith New Media Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/NFNM group. You can also follow us on social media, and those links are in the show notes. We have several other shows, including A Pastor and a Priest Walk into a Movie Theater, and you can access all of these shows by subscribing to New Faith New Media wherever you get your podcast. You can also support the New Faith New Media Network on Patreon. All Patreon supporters get access to our Patreon exclusive podcast, Blessed Lunatics, where the founding members of the New Faith New Media explore the divine through laughter, which means we usually drink and share stories and make jokes about our different faith backgrounds. Actually, there's an episode where I share the backstory of this song you're hearing right now. Finally, if you want to know more about my music, you can head to my website, gailgallaghermusic.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to stay curious and keep following the magic of the things that resonate.
New Faith, New Media.
Theology.
Nerdery.
Community.